The streetlights flickered intermittently, casting long wavering shadows over the manicured lawns of Maplewood Estates. The neighborhood was supposed to be safe, a quiet gated community where families lived under the watchful eye of the HOA, led by none other than its president, Charles Grant. But tonight, something felt off. Charles sat behind the lace curtains of his modest two-story home, a mug of cold coffee untouched on the windowsill. His eyes, sharp and unblinking, were fixed on the street outside. A string of small disturbances had frayed his nerves. The broken mailbox at the Hendersons, the dead battery in the community garden security camera, and the faint, unexplained, rustling sounds heard late at night. But what gnawed at him most was the feeling that someone was watching him. For weeks, the HOA president had been obsessed with control, with maintaining the perfect image of Maplewood Estates. The security system, recently upgraded with the help of a mysterious new contractor, was supposed to guarantee that. Cameras dotted every corner, sensors lined the perimeter fences, and the community clubhouse had been converted into a command center for monitoring. Yet, someone was slipping through the cracks. Charles tapped his fingers on the windowsill. He had spent sleepless nights reviewing footage, but every time something suspicious appeared, it vanished before he could catch it clearly. The figure's eye were ghosts, silhouettes that flickered and disappeared, leaving behind only questions. Tonight he had decided he wouldn't wait behind curtains or rely on cameras. He would catch the intruder himself. The clubhouse roof was the perfect vantage point, high enough to see the entire cul-de-sac, hidden from prying eyes. Charles grabbed his binoculars and flashlight, slipped on a jacket, and quietly stepped out. The air was cool and smelled faintly of rain, the calm before a storm. He crept toward the clubhouse, his footsteps muffled by the soft grass. The building sat empty and dark, a ghostly shell in the moonlight. Climbing the ladder, he felt his heart thumping, not just from exertion, but from the adrenaline of the hunt. Reaching the roof, Charles settled into a crouch behind the low parapet wall. From here, he could see the entire neighborhood stretched out like a miniature model, the street lamps glowing like fireflies, the houses lined neatly in rows, and there, just beyond the hedge by the Hendersons' house, a faint movement caught his eye. A shadow. Charles adjusted his binoculars, holding his breath. The figure was small, moving quickly, almost too fast to follow. It ducked behind a tree, then emerged again, scanning the street as if looking for something or someone. Suddenly, Charles realized the figure was heading toward him. His heart slammed against his ribs. He grabbed his flashlight to signal, but the beam flickered and died. A cold shiver ran down his spine as he fumbled with the batteries, cursing under his breath. In the confusion, his foot slipped on a loose patch of gravel. He lost balance. Time slowed. Charles tumbled backward, the world spinning in a dizzy blur. His hand grasped for the edge of the roof, fingers scraping against rough concrete. But it wasn't enough. He fell, the cold night air rushing past him, before landing with a heavy thud on the ground below. Pain exploded in his head, blurring his vision. For a long moment, there was only darkness. When Charles finally came to, the neighborhood was silent. The shadow had vanished, but something else was missing from his memory. The name of the person who had installed the community security system. The one person he had trusted to keep Maplewood Estates safe. And now, the line between hunter and hunted had blurred into a dangerous mystery, with secrets lurking in every shadow. The cold night air bit through Charles's jacket as he lay on the grass, the sharp ache in his ribs making every breath shallow. His mind swirled, fragmented by the fall. But one thought clung stubbornly. Who was that shadowy figure? And why had they come so close? Ignoring the pain, Charles struggled to his feet. Clutching the clubhouse wall for support, he had to get back up there. To see. To know. Inside the clubhouse, the air was stale, thick with the scent of dust and old coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Charles flicked on the security monitors. Several cameras blinked online, but most were glitching. Pixelated screens showing distorted shapes, static bursts, or sudden blackouts. He scanned each feed, eyes narrowing. At the edge of one frame, near the Hendersons' yard, a flicker, something moving, then nothing. The system was failing him. Someone was sabotaging the cameras. A knot twisted in Charles's stomach. He had trusted the new security setup blindly, never questioning who had engineered it. Now, it seemed the very system meant to protect the neighborhood was turning against them. Determined to catch the intruder, Charles decided to return to the roof. If the cameras were compromised, his own eyes had to do the job. Climbing back up, the wind had picked up, howling softly around the building's edges. The rooftop felt colder now, the darkness deeper. He settled into his usual spot, binoculars pressed tightly to his eyes. Minutes stretched into an hour. Shadows shifted. Leaves rustled, but nothing moved deliberately. Then, out of the corner of his eye, a flicker near the old oak tree caught his attention. A figure, this time unmistakable. The intruder was small, wearing a dark hoodie, their face hidden in the shadows. They moved with practiced stealth, slipping from tree to fence like a ghost. Charles's pulse raced. He lifted his flashlight, ready to catch them in the beam. But before he could signal, a soft click echoed behind him. He froze. Slowly, Charles turned. A silhouette stood at the roof's edge. A woman, young, confident, her eyes glinting with sharp intelligence. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Charles opened his mouth to protest, but no words came. "Name's Maya," she said. "I live in the neighborhood. How do you get up here without setting off alarms?" Charles demanded, suspicion tightening his throat. She smiled faintly. "Let's just say I know the security system better than most. It's been acting weird lately, hasn't it?" Charles studied her. Was she friend or foe? His instinct screamed caution, but desperation won. "What do you want?" he asked. "To help," she replied. "I think someone's been messing with the system. And it's not just random vandalism. This is something bigger." Charles wanted to believe her, but the fall had left his mind foggy, his memory betraying him. He barely remembered who had designed the security setup, something he'd trusted blindly. Suddenly, the rooftop silence was shattered by a low beep from Charles's phone. He glanced down at the screen. Security breach detected. Camera offline. His heart skipped. The system was being attacked again, and the intruder was still out there. Maya's eyes darkened. "This isn't just about petty crimes," she said. "Someone's trying to control the entire neighborhood, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep it secret." Charles swallowed hard, the weight of suspicion pressing down. The quiet streets of Maplewood Estates were no longer safe, and now, with an unknown enemy in the shadows, the game of cat and mouse had truly begun. Charles Grant sat alone in his dimly lit living room. The soft hum of the security system's monitors filling the silence like a distant heartbeat. The fall from the clubhouse roof still throbbed in his side. But it was the fog in his mind that worried him more. His memory felt fractured, like shards of glass too scattered to piece together. He rubbed his temples, trying to grasp at a thought that kept slipping away. Who had installed the security system? He knew it had been a trusted figure, someone within the community with the skills and the knowledge to build such a network. But the name, the face, the details. All were lost behind a thick veil of confusion. Maya's visit earlier that night replayed in his mind. She'd claimed to understand the system better than most, even hinted at sabotage beyond petty neighborhood vandalism. Yet the trust Charles had always placed in his position as HOA president wavered. If he couldn't remember who engineered the security system, how could he ensure it was safe? Worse, what if the architect was the very person behind the recent chaos? His phone buzzed sharply, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. A new alert. Multiple security breaches detected. Camera feeds offline. Intruder alert near the clubhouse. Charles's pulse quickened. He scrambled to the control panel, fingers trembling as he attempted to reboot the system. Static filled the screens, followed by one garbled image of a figure slipping through the shadows. Then, nothing. The house suddenly felt colder. The walls, closing in with the weight of suspicion. Someone was dismantling the neighborhood's defenses, piece by piece, and Charles was powerless to stop it. A knock at the door jolted him upright. He opened it to find Maya standing there, her expression serious, eyes scanning the street behind her. "We need to talk," she said. "This is bigger than you realize." Inside, Maya laid out what she'd uncovered while probing the security network. Hidden logs encrypted deep within the system revealed unauthorized access. Someone remotely manipulating the cameras, erasing footage, even triggering false alarms to sow confusion. Who would have the access and the motive? Charles asked, frustration edging his voice. Maya hesitated. That's the question. But whoever it is, they know the system inside and out. They're using it as a weapon. Charles's gaze dropped. A bitter truth dawned. The architect of the security system was not just a tech genius. They might be the mastermind behind the disruption. His memories teased him. Fragmented scenes flashing at the edges of his mind. A name. A face blurred by pain and time. He clutched at the fragments, desperate to make sense of them, before the pieces slipped away forever. Suddenly, a soft chime from his phone alerted another message. This one different. A text from an unknown number. Stop looking. Some things are better left buried. Charles's hand shook as he read and reread the warning. Who was sending these? A neighbor? A saboteur? Or someone close enough to watch his every move? Fear crept into his bones. The quiet facade of Maplewood Estates was crumbling, revealing a hidden web of secrets and lies. As the night deepened, Charles realized that his biggest enemy might not be outside the gates. It might be someone within the community, someone who had engineered not just the security system, but a carefully orchestrated game of control and deception. And as his fractured memory haunted him, Charles knew that uncovering the truth would come at a cost that could unravel. The very neighborhood he had sworn to protect, Charles Grant, sat in the dim glow of the community clubhouse's command center, staring at the flickering monitors, like a man trying to read a language he no longer understood. The security feeds, once his greatest source of confidence, now seemed riddled with betrayals, blackouts, glitches, distorted images that hinted at secrets hidden in plain sight. He rubbed his aching head and replayed the footage from the past, weak, looking for any pattern, any clue that might reveal who was sabotaging the system. But each time the grainy images sharpened to something recognizable, the frame suddenly collapsed into static. Maya stood behind him, her arms crossed, eyes sharp and calculating. The glitches aren't random, she said softly. Someone's controlling what you see, what you don't see. Charles frowned. But how? The system was supposed to be foolproof. Not when someone built back doors into it. Maya replied, if the architect had the right skills, and access. They could manipulate the cameras remotely, hide themselves, create false alarms, even erase footage. The word architect struck Charles like a cold wave. He wanted to ask who that was. He should remember, but the memory stayed just out of reach, like a puzzle missing its final piece. Maya pulled up a schematic on the screen, revealing the intricate layout of the security network. Cameras, sensors, wiring, encryption protocols. It was impressive, detailed, far beyond what a typical HOA would install. Whoever had engineered it was a genius. Whoever did this had a reason, Maya said, voice lowering. Someone with a personal stake in the community. And from what I can see, they're not just protecting the neighborhood, they're controlling it. Charles's heart tightened. Control. The very thing he'd always sought to maintain. Could it be one of the board members? He asked, feeling a cold suspicion settle over him. Maya nodded. Possibly, but the most surprising thing is that the system's creator has stayed in the shadows. Quiet, reclusive, underestimated. No one expected them to have this level of power. Charles's thoughts raced. A faint image flickered in his mind. A neighbor he had often overlooked. The quiet one who kept to themselves, never attended meetings. Always polite but distant. Do you think it's them? He asked. Maybe, Maya said, but I need access to the original programming files to be sure. If I can find a signature in the code, I can trace it back. Before Charles could respond, his phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown. Number. Stop digging or lose everything. His fingers tightened around the device. The warning wasn't just a threat anymore. It was a promise. A sudden chill crept through the room. Charles glanced out the window. The street was empty, yet the feeling of eyes watching him was undeniable. He realized that his fall from the roof hadn't just knocked loose memories. It had knocked loose secrets, better left buried. Maya's voice broke through the silence. We're close to something, Charles, but you have to be careful. Whoever's behind this won't hesitate to silence anyone who gets too close. The weight of her words settled heavily on him. The neighborhood he had governed with confidence was now a battleground of shadows and secrets, and the very system he'd trusted to protect them was the key to a conspiracy that threatened to unravel everything. Charles looked back at the monitors. Somewhere within the streams of distorted images and hidden codes lay the truth about the security system, about the intruder, and about the person who had engineered it all. But uncovering it would mean confronting the ghosts of his fractured memory and facing the enemy who lurked just beyond the screens. Charles Grant paced the length of his living room, the weight of uncertainty pressing on his chest like a vice. Maya's presence had become both a lifeline and a source of doubt. She was the only person who seemed capable of unraveling the tangled web surrounding the security system. Yet every glance she cast carried an edge, something unreadable, guarded. The neighborhood was watching them too. The board had grown restless, whispering behind closed doors about the increasing malfunctions and unexplained breaches. Rumors were bubbling up like a slow boil. Was Charles losing his grip? Was the sabotage a symptom of a larger rot inside the HOA? Charles knew he couldn't face this alone. But trusting Maya, especially after the fall that clouded his memory, felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. Why are you really helping me? Charles asked suddenly, as they sat at his kitchen table. Maps and laptop screens sprawled. Before them, Maya's eyes met his. Because I live here too. Because someone is using the system to control us all, and I want to stop it before it's too late. Her words sounded sincere, but Charles's gut told him to stay alert. You said you know the system better than most. How? I helped design parts of it, Maya admitted, voice low. Before moving here, I worked on security for private communities, systems like this. When I saw what was happening here, I couldn't stay quiet. Charles leaned back, rubbing his temples. So you're saying you helped build the very system that's being hacked? Partly, she said. But I never authorized any of this sabotage. Someone else has taken control. The question that gnawed at Charles was who else could have that kind of access, and why they'd want to destroy the community's safety net. A sudden beep from his laptop snapped their attention. Maya's eyes widened. Encrypted files, she whispered, hidden in the deepest layers of the network. Together, they dug through the layers of code, uncovering traces of unauthorized access logs and cryptic messages left by the intruder. Messages that seemed almost personal. They're watching us, Maya said. Monitoring every move we make. Charles felt a chill. The enemy was not only invisible, they were inside their heads. That night, Charles found himself staring out at the quiet streets. Shadows pooling beneath the street lamps. Someone was playing a dangerous game, and the pieces were moving closer. Closer to him. As the hours ticked by, Charles's thoughts raced. Could Maya be a double agent? Or was she the only hope left? And what if the fractured memories of his fall concealed a betrayal even deeper than the corrupted security system? Suddenly, the power flickered. The monitors went dark, and from the silence came a whispered voice from his phone. Trust no one. The sudden blackout plunged Charles Grant's house into thick darkness. His fingers fumbled for the flashlight on the kitchen counter, the beam cutting through the blacks like a fragile lifeline. The screens that had once streamed the neighborhood's every movement were now silent, dead. Great, Charles muttered, frustration boiling beneath his calm facade. The security system had been their only shield against the unseen threat, and now even that had been taken away. Maya was already on her phone, her voice a low whisper. They're cutting off every access point. Whoever's behind this is tightening the noose. Charles's mind reeled. The threat wasn't just external. It was growing closer, infiltrating every corner of Maplewood Estates. We need to regroup, Charles said, his voice steady despite the rising dread. Meet at the clubhouse in 30 minutes. We'll try to restore what we can from there. Maya nodded, her eyes flickering with a mix of fear and determination. Outside, the neighborhood was eerily silent. No cars, no distant voices, just the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. Charles felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on him, the sense that every shadow was watching, waiting. As they drove to the clubhouse, Charles's thoughts raced back to his fall from the roof. The fractured memories teased him. A fleeting face, a name just beyond reach. Was that person connected to the sabotage? Or worse, were they standing beside him now? At the clubhouse, the command center was cold and dim, emergency lights casting long shadows across the walls. Maya immediately set to work on the central terminal, fingers flying over the keyboard as she attempted to override the system lockdown. Look at this, she said, pulling up a series of encrypted files, embedded deep within the system's code. These aren't just access logs. They're messages, warnings, almost like threats. Charles leaned in, reading the chilling words scrolled in digital code. Stop digging, or face the consequences. A shiver ran down his spine. Whoever did this knows how to get inside your head, Maya said quietly. They're playing a psychological game as much as a technical one. Charles's eyes hardened. He wasn't going to be their pawn. Suddenly, the room's security cameras flickered back to life, but the feeds were different, distorted, almost surreal. One camera showed an empty hallway, Another flickered to a close-up of a cracked mirror, reflecting a blurred figure lurking just beyond the frame. And then, a chilling sight. One camera feed showed Charles's own house. There, in the shadows, a figure moved with deliberate stealth. The intruder was unmistakable. The same dark hooded silhouette Charles had glimpsed before. "Did you see that?" Charles whispered, voice tight. Maya nodded grimly. "They want you to see this, to know they're watching." The line between hunter and hunted was dissolving. As the night deepened, Charles realized the fight wasn't just for control of the security system. It was a battle for the soul of Maplewood Estates and his own survival, and somewhere hidden, in the dark corners of the neighborhood, the mastermind watched, waiting for the next move. The weight of the night pressed heavily on Charles as he stood before the flickering monitors in the clubhouse. The images of the dark hooded figure burned into his mind. Every twitch, every shadowy movement spoke of someone who was not just invading the neighborhood, but invading his life. Maya sat beside him, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. The encrypted files they had uncovered were more than just warnings now. They were breadcrumbs leading to a name. A name that sent a shiver down Charles's spine. "Look at this," Maya said, pulling up a series of logs dated months back. "See this? The system was originally programmed by Simon Hendricks." Charles's breath caught. Simon Hendricks, the quiet neighbor no one suspected, the man who lived in the old brick house at the end of Maplewood Lane, a man who kept to himself, attending barely any meetings, and who had been all but invisible in the community's daily life. "I never thought much of him," Charles whispered, recalling the countless times he had walked past Simon without a second glance. But now it all fit. The master programmer, the architect of the security system, and the mastermind behind its sabotage. Maya nodded. "He's been manipulating the system remotely, erasing footage, creating false alarms. But why? Before Charles could answer, a message popped up on the screen. A video feed. The camera showed the interior of Simon's house. Papers, computer screens filled with code, and maps strewn across the walls. And there, sitting calmly in front of the monitors, was Simon himself. Eyes cold, fingers poised above a keyboard. "He's been watching us all along," Maya said quietly, controlling the neighborhood like a puppet master. Charles's heart pounded. He realized Simon's motives were deeper than mere control. The encrypted messages hinted at a personal vendetta, a hidden grudge born from years of neglect and exclusion. "We have to confront him," Charles said, determination hardening his voice. "Before he does more damage." Maya hesitated. "It's dangerous. He knows the system inside and out, and if he's this careful, he probably has traps set up." But Charles was resolute. The community needed answers. They needed to reclaim their neighborhood. Together, they planned their approach. First, they would gather evidence, irrefutable proof of Simon's manipulations. Then, they'd bring it to the HOA board and the authorities. As they left the clubhouse, a storm was brewing on the horizon, the distant rumble of thunder mirroring the turmoil in Charles's mind. Simon Hendricks was no longer just a shadow in the neighborhood. He was the storm itself, and the endgame was fast approaching. Charles and Maya approached Simon Hendricks's old brick house, under the grey sky, the storm's first drops splattering against the cracked pavement. The neighborhood was holding its breath. This was the moment the unseen puppeteer would be unmasked. The front door creaked open before they could knock. Simon stood there, expression unreadable, eyes cold and calculating. "Charles," he said, voice calm but edged with menace. "I've been expecting you." Charles swallowed the lump in his throat. "Why, Simon? Why sabotage the neighborhood you helped protect? Simon's lips curled into a bitter smile. Protect? No, control. You all thought you were safe because of the system. But safety is an illusion. I built it to watch, to punish those who ignored me, dismissed me. Maya stepped forward. Your vendetta is hurting everyone here. It has to stop. Simon laughed, dark and hollow. Stop! You don't understand. This neighborhood rejected me years ago. You, Charles, especially. Charles froze. A sudden flicker of memory returned. An argument at a board meeting years back. Voices raised. Simon's warnings dismissed. And then, the fall from the clubhouse roof. It wasn't an accident. I remember now, Charles said, voice cracking. You pushed me. You wanted me out of the way. Simon's eyes gleamed with triumph. Exactly. I engineered the system and the chaos to make sure you'd never regain control. Suddenly, Simon lunged toward the house's interior, and Charles barely caught a glimpse of a concealed panel. A last failsafe wired to trigger a massive blackout. Maya acted quickly, grabbing Simon's arm. You're finished. But Simon's grip was iron. In the struggle, Charles stumbled backward and fell hard, the world spinning as he hit the ground. Pain blossomed through his body, but the memories surged stronger. Not just of the attack, but of a secret he'd buried deep. As Charles lay there, his mind cleared. The security system wasn't just Simon's design. It had another architect, someone Charles trusted, someone who had helped build the neighborhood's defenses from the start. Maya, he whispered hoarsely. The other programmer. It was you, wasn't it? Maya's eyes flashed with a mix of surprise and something else. Guilt. I wanted to protect the neighborhood, she confessed quietly. But Simon's sabotage forced me to fight fire with fire. I built back doors, yes, but only to monitor and control the damage. The shock hit Charles hard. The betrayal wasn't just Simon's. It was layered, tangled in alliances and fear. Sirens wailed in the distance. The authorities had arrived, tipped off by neighbors, alerted to the conflict. Simon snarled, caught between fury and defeat. Charles struggled to sit up, the fragmented pieces of the past finally knitting together. In the end, the neighborhood's safety was restored, but the scars remained, etched in broken trust and shattered memories. As dawn broke over Maplewood Estates, Charles looked out over the quiet streets. The fight was over, but the real battle had been within. The struggle to remember who engineered the very system meant to protect them. And in that fragile light, Charles understood the greatest lesson. Sometimes, the greatest threats come not from outside the walls, but from the shadows within.